the growing calls across the nation to defund the police.
To end policing as we know it.
Off the charts violence in New York City. 11 people shot in just 8 hours on
This is
Sunday.
about the police officers who every single day put on that uniform and they run towards danger when we run away from it.
Oh boy, this is a guns up.
Get it up! Oof! How you feeling, Tansey? How you feeling?
Dude, I'm feeling good, brother.
You don't want to know how I'm feeling today? Are you ready for this?
I feel good.
Oh, that was it? Oh,
Copyright, man.
copyright. Yeah, damn it.
I did the same thing.
Dang it, man.
I was like, boy, we're starting off hard. We're going to get kicked off of YouTube's real quick.
I'm feeling good, man. I'm excited for today. Today is a break. Today's a break for me. I've been so freaking busy that to hang out with you all, you guys, I mean, Tansey, BC, the producers, we're here, man. We're going to have an awesome show, and it's a break from all the noise. I'm super excited about this. Let's do it. You guys are listening to the Failure to Stop podcast, which is, that's right, fill in the blank, the #1 show where law enforcement meets culture, baby. And today is our flagship Friday shows, and you know what that means. It means a breakdown is coming your way. We're going to break down a case. We're throwing it back to 1989, baby, an Ash Street Shootout. Army Ranger versus the Crips. What?
This is a guns up, giddy up episode if we've ever had one.
We're gonna kill it. I gotta give credit where credit is due. I first heard of this story from Popo Medic on YouTube, so kudos to you and all the great work you've been doing. Heard about the story from you. Told Tansey he wanted to take a deep dive on his own. We bring in BC Sanders today to give us color by numbers about the Crips. We got a huge show coming your way. So stick around. That's what we're going to be covering on today's breakdown. Before we get to that, if you like the show, we have 5 shows a week, guys. So Monday is off the cuff. Me and Dave break down law enforcement news. Tuesdays, The Disruptors comes out. BC, say hello.
Hello.
That's right. Know your place.
That's right.
Yeah.
You will
no,
talk when I say.
Turn me up in my headphones.
You don't want to cross the big spoon or the water will splash back on you. You know what I'm saying?
No, I don't.
All right. So Disruptors, which is killing it, guys. Killing it on Tuesdays. When Tuesday nights, we go live on YouTube for Night Shift, and then the audio comes out on Wednesdays. Thursdays is Last Call with Tansey and the Overpaid Producer. They give you all the pop culture news you need to stay relevant and normal on the weekends. Fridays is what you're listening to now. Guys, we're having a blast. Our YouTube, we're adding even more content to our YouTube channel beyond the podcast. Things are growing, things are moving, and you're along for the ride. We couldn't be doing it without you. The Wolf Pack. Thank you so much. If you want to support the show, failuretostop.com. You can grab merch. All of your whiskey glasses for the millionth download celebration should be coming out to you. And you can also become a member on YouTube. You can drop super chats in. That's about it for now. I guess you can support our sponsors. I don't know. That's it. I hear myself in a feedback somewhere in here. So if the producers want to start figuring out why I hear myself, coming back through somebody's headphones on your end or something, just something to work on in the background.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just turned me up because I was way down. So I'm not sure. Do we always get in here like 2 hours early? We start trying to get it all right, and then as soon as that timer countdown, it all goes to shit.
Well, you go full Tansey. As soon as the live hits, you go full Tansey. You talk super quiet. You're super shy. Everything's just laid back, and then all of a sudden, dude, that live button is hit, and you go full Tansey. And things get loud, you know?
Yeah, it's that cocaine that hits, drops. Just kidding. I've never done that a day in my life. Thanks, old Craigers.
Right, that's it. Craig, I don't know what Craig does. I want to do it. Craig, please help me. Please help me and Tansey. We want to work for you. Craig.
Yeah.
He's super
chatty. I think we do work for Craig, technically at this
point. So whatever's going on, Craig, we're going to send you whatever. We got to find some shit.
Craig sends a super chat. Like,
all to you.
Craig sends a super chat before we even come on. It says, "Hey guys, I don't know what your take is or your opinion is on this, but let me tell you my opinion, and this will be my super chat." So,
There you go.
What's your opinion, boys?
Angling
We're like,
that
yeah, whatever
carrot.
you want, buddy. We'll say it.
All right, we want to thank the Wolfpack for your taking the time to drop an actual review on Apple Podcasts. Apple Podcasts and Spotify are the lion's share of our audio listens, and Apple is the king of ratings, and so the ratings and reviews help there. So let's see what the Wolfpack has been saying on Apple Podcasts. Dre 31569 gives it a 5 stars. Best show ever. This is the best show ever. Penis.
Penis. Did any of you guys ever play penis when you were in school?
No.
You never played penis. So like penis in school is like everybody had to say the word penis, but whoever got caught obviously lost. So it would usually start out with somebody going like, you would look at your buddy, like you would look at PC and go, penis. And then he'd have to like look at Jimmy and be like, penis. And then Jimmy would be like, penis. And then it would come back to me and I'd be like, penis. Until like somebody was like,
whoever said
until you got caught. Well, we were doing SATs one time, and somebody had just farted like very loudly, and the teacher was like, "That is enough. Next person that makes any noise is out. You will do your SATs out in the hallway." And everybody was like, and she's like, "I'm telling you, that's enough." And then it's like, as soon as it died down, my buddy looks over me and he goes, "Penis," and I was like. So I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to so I just went, penis, and everybody erupted, and I had to go take the SATs in the hallway.
Heck yeah, boys.
Penis.
Next review. This podcast gives me HOV. Coma Guy 597 gives it 5 stars. I've been listening to this podcast since day one, and it's the best I've listened to. It includes a family of shows that leaves you with plenty of content. Every night after I listen to it, I sleep so good on my ghost bed. It's scary. The sound of Skate Daddy Tansey's voice at 0.5 speed and Mike's soothing voice makes my ear holes tingle like squeezing through the Nutty Putty Cave. The over and underpaid producers are good too. I love listening to this while working out on my 15-pound bar, then not racking my weights. Can't wait for the 200th episode. Are the producers circumcised?
I
didn't ask that. That's in the review. That's in the
Jimmy. Jimmy says he is not a Sith Lord. He is a Jedi. He does not wear a hood.
But it's a stout head.
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm Luke Skywalker
Goes to relevance.
over here.
Like I've seen Jimmy's. It's like a 3-stack of tuna cans.
Yeah.
It's like if you put 3 tuna
Like
cans
a banana
together
and a quarter slot. Oh, I don't know. All
But it
right.
just comes to a blunt end.
You want to read this one, Tansey?
A moment of sanity amidst chaos by Disappointed 640. Love, love, love this podcast. As a 911 dispatcher for a very liberal area, it's nice to hear sane, reasonable, and funny thoughts on law enforcement. At work, I often want to cry, scream, rage over the incredible stupidity in humans that evolution has yet to kill off. I like to listen to this podcast as a coping mechanism so I don't get myself fired. Idiots equal job security, and girls gotta eat. Thanks, guys. Oh, you're welcome. We have a lot of new stuff. There's a fly in my studio. What? We've got some new stuff, like big changes coming. I think we decided we'll tell you guys all next week about those big changes. A lot of our shows. Big announcement. Lots of new changes, and the shows are just going to get absolutely better from here because we're growing. So,
all right, last review.
Exciting.
Let's see what we got here. This is Pride Month, so you know what that means. Serious to laughing, 0 to 60. On the road all the time, 5 stars. Some podcasts I walk away being depressed because I listen for an hour, step by step. This podcast covers everyday news and can be serious, then a tangent goes funny. Very engaging and very relatable to a non-cop. Makes my commute to work so much more enjoyable, because if I didn't listen to it, I would have road rage every day driving it in Nashville, Tennessee. Thank you, guys. It is.
That was completely a great review.
Amazing. Happy Pride Month, everybody.
Come again next week.
Thank you. Come again. All right. He's very good at this. Big Pride Month guy. You know me. I'm all about the pride, baby. All right. That covers our reviews. And when do we want to do any sponsorship stuff this episode? Do we do any now? We've got 2 today.
Oh, do we really? I didn't even look. I'm so embarrassed.
Let me get I'll let you figure out Policy Genius in the middle of the show. But right now, let's just let you know this is brought to you by Ghostbed. Hands down. Again, guys, we try to convey to you when we talk about sponsors. You know, a lot of podcasts you listen to, they don't care who the sponsor is. We actually have cared, and Ghostbed finding a podcast sponsor for a pro cop show, right? Anybody that hangs there with us and deals with that nonsense, like the way that I just read that review is a cancelable offense in advertising world. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have a company that believes in free speech and supporting people who are trying to just have a good time and teach people common sense from a law enforcement perspective. And Ghostbed is a company that has hung through there with us from the very beginning. So thank you to Ghostbed. You can use the code DRINKINBROS, DRINKINBROS, to save 30%. I own a Ghostbed. Elijah, the underpaid producer, owns a Ghostbed. Tons of our listeners have gotten Ghostbeds because of failure to stop. Keep it up. If you're looking for a new bed, get one. I know that Eric normally reads all the fancy stuff. Listen, that's all irrelevant. Just buy one. Shut your mouth. Buy a Ghostbed. End of story.
Yeah. And then send us a picture of it. We'll repost it on Facebook, because we take a lot of pride in that, man. Like we talked to the guys at Ghostbed, and they said that of all the shows, like you guys, we get the most pictures, tags, all the things. Anytime somebody does a survey, they always mention our show, which is really cool. So I think there's some cool stuff coming down the pipe with Ghostbed for us in the next year, because our 1 year is up next Friday. We'll been together for a whole year. One year.
All right, let's talk about some Ranger versus Crips, man. I'm ready.
Oh, I just got a picture from my wife, and she sent me a picture of my child at the swimming pool. So, there it is. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, Jimmy, for that. She looks just like me. She looks just She looks just like me. God bless.
The diaper does it for me. Listen, guys, if you're not watching the show, if you're just a listener, it's worth going to YouTube and going ahead and looking at this section to see the photo that we were talking about. Make sure if you are on YouTube watching right now, there's 139 people watching live. Click the like button, share it up where you can share it, but clicking the like button and keep commenting. It helps the algorithm and it helps us. And if you like what you see and you like what you hear, subscribe. All right, let's go.
All right, let's dive right into this. Today we're talking about a real firefight. We had a firefight last week. This week we're talking about another firefight. This is where one Ranger decided enough was enough in his community. And so he went vigilante or not. I don't know. We'll discuss it. It's a debatable. I would say that it's like 50-50 vigilante slash self-defense. But if you haven't heard of this, this is the Tacoma, Washington Hill Street Shootout, where Rangers from 2nd Ranger Battalion took back a neighborhood from Crip gang members.
This is Hill or Ash Street? I'm confused.
It's Ash Street, but the name of the gang was the Hilltop Crips.
Hilltop Crips.
And
Gotcha.
we've got BC Sanders, the gang expert, coming in here to talk all about that. But just to give you a little bit of a backstory on this, Tarantino it just a little bit. The reason why we're doing the show today is because many of you have sent us messages wanting us to break down this case, which happened in 1989. And it's a very fun story, but there's actually a lot more to the story than anybody else really touched upon. And so I wasn't going to do it until I realized that there's nobody out there that has really deep dove it other than just telling it in legendary story form. So today we're actually going to deep dive and go through all of the aspects of this from a police perspective, how it got the way it did, how it ended, and what transpired afterwards, and how it can kind of relate to modern day. So the whole story starts out with a guy named Sergeant Bill Foulk, spelled Foulk, and he was a ranger from the 2nd Ranger Battalion, and this was in the 80s. And for any of you who don't know what rangers are, a lot of people don't know what rangers are. So Big Bird to Cookie Monster for you guys in special operations terminologies and things like that. I will kind of go through what rangers actually are and what they actually do. So in the Navy, you have a very elite group of guys that we'll call SEAL Team 6, and that is all your best Navy SEALs. Actually, their real name probably is like DevGru or Gold Squadron or something like that. But regular SEALs are what we call Tier 2, and then DevGru or SEAL Team 6 would be called Tier 1. And then you have Tier 3, which would be your SWIC guys. Those are your boat drivers for the SEALs. Those are your helicopter pilots for the SEALs, things like that. So every branch of the military pretty much has a Tier 3 unit, a Tier 2 unit, and a Tier 1 unit. The Army's Tier 2 unit would be Green Berets. Their Tier 3 unit would be Rangers. And then Tier 1 would be Delta Force or CAG or whatever you want to call it. So
where do Marine Raiders fit in on that?
Marine Corps Raiders would be Tier 2, but I'm sure that the Marine MARSOC has their own Tier 1 guys.
Yeah, is there a name for Marine Tier 1 guys?
I don't know. I don't have that name right now. I know that MARSOC was curious. MARSOC was super new. They had Force Recon again, which was their kind of. The Marine Corps has always just kind of like wanted to dabble in this whole special operations thing, but they've never really like nailed it. They've never really had their own identity. So like your SEALs are your HRT, worldwide hostage rescue dudes, direct action all the time. Your Green Berets are more your long-term fix to something. They embed with units overseas. They embed with indigenous forces and they train, mentor them. And so they kind of have to be experts in survival. They have to be experts in kind of dealing with their money and things like that, because when you're living with indigenous forces, you have to fund them. You have to feed them. There's a lot that goes into it. You have to teach them direct action. You have to teach them to be recon guys as well. Also, they do airborne operations, land operations, and sea operations, just like SEALs. So your SEALs do land, sea, and air, but they're very quick. They're in and they're right back out. Your Green Berets are land, sea, and air, but they're in and they stay in. And so it's not uncommon to see like 3 Green Berets in a country that will stay there for like 3 years, working with some kind of indigenous force on something, whether it's teaching them to take down drug guys or whether it's trying to disrupt some kind of trafficking that's going on or disrupt some kind of terrorist organization or movement. Actually, the movie Black Hawk Down, which we talked about last Thursday, is a great example of all of this, because you had Cav guys, then you had your Rangers, then you had a couple of Green Berets, and then you had Delta Force all working together in that movie. Mm-hmm. But your Rangers are going to be direct action and in direct support of Tier 1 elements and Tier 2 elements. So kind of a quick scenario, you might have 2 Green Berets embedded in, let's just say, Colombia, and they're trying to find a drug lord. And these guys are doing all of your surveillance. They're doing all their kind of covert operations, like kind of spy-ish type stuff, kind of like CIA stuff, working with the CIA, trying to determine who the bad guy are, whatever. Then they find it out, then they're going to tell Delta, and Delta's going to go in there and try to take these guys out in Bogota, Colombia, or SEALs or Delta. Could be one of the two. But then they're going to have Rangers that are going to surround the area and go in with them. So, and this time, Rangers were really, really getting their first big mission since, World War II and Vietnam, which was going to be Panama, which was Noriega. They were going to go airborne. They were going to seize an airport in Panama, and then, was it capture or take back Noriega, essentially. And this was going to happen in December of 1989. Now, the story we're talking about is going to happen in September in 1989. And a lot of the guys that are actually in this shootout in Tacoma, Washington, are going to go and fight in Panama just in another couple of months.
So this is like a warm-up match?
This is absolutely a warm-up. But Rangers, they really came in hand. Like they really kind of got their own with Iraq and Afghanistan. It's really what they were built for. They were built for land, sea, and air, but they are the best infantrymen with the best tactics. It would be like having a entire force of SWAT guys. So whereas you have your SWAT team on your police department, now just imagine like 200 SWAT operators. Yeah. Rangers go through a very strict indoctrination program. They go through a very hard selection. I actually went through the Ranger selection RASP in the early 2000s. And these guys are specially selected, well-trained gentlemen that are fucking animals. They are the best at what they do. I always appreciate Rangers because they're actually kind of quiet. They're not like Navy SEALs where they want to tell everybody that they're Navy SEALs. Now there's a difference between Rangers that have a Ranger scroll on their arm and Rangers from Ranger Battalion.
Okay.
Ranger course is a very hard school that everybody goes to, but it's a leadership course. It's great. You learn how to do op orders, which is how to plan an operation from the beginning and to see it all the way through to fruition. So an op order kind of starts out with some high-ranking official giving a folder to like say I have a folder that says that there's going to be a mission. We're going to take down a drug house in Detroit, Michigan. And I will hand that pamphlet to you. And it's going to say, Mike, we got to take down these drug operators in Detroit. They're Crip gang members. They wear blue and they operate in this area. Now you would take that plan and you would go to, as an op order, as you would go to your battalion or your not your battalion, but your team. And you guys would have 24 to 48 hours to draw up a plan on how you're going to deal with this. And your plan is going to be like this thick. We're talking coordinating efforts with other law enforcement agencies. You're talking about air assets, land assets, sea assets. You're talking about confidential informants, deflection. What ammo are you carrying? Who's carrying what ammo? What comms you're going to be on? What explosives you're going to take? What guns? I mean, the planning in 48 hours is intense and there's no sleep. I mean, you are locked down. Window shades are down. Doors are locked. Nobody knows what your plan is going to be. You got to build a sand table. And these sand tables are very elaborate. They can use chalk, blue chalk to make rivers and streams. We're going to put like Tonka truck toys. We're going to put block things. We're going to make this sand table as realistic as we possibly can to emulate what this mission is going to be. And then you're going to take that and you're going to brief it to it could be the president of the United States, could be the general, could be anybody on how you guys plan on doing this mission. So Ranger School teaches you how to do all of that and operate at the same time. So you might have 4 or 5 op orders while you're still taking down other targets and planning. And it is just this massive logistical, no sleep, no food, tons of work style course that is great for any leader. But now there are some people that go to this school and they get their Ranger tab, and that means that they are proficient in doing these types of operations and planning. But then there are guys who actually go to this school, learn that, and then use it forever in a unit that's all they do. So that would be like if you went to SWAT school and you got your little SWAT badge, but you weren't on a SWAT team. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you completed the training, but you haven't executed on it.
Right.
Like in real world scenario.
In real world scenario, except for like maybe what you do with your guys back at your department level. So you go to SWAT school, you learn some tactics, you take those back to your guys, you use those tactics that you learned on search warrants and whatnot. But these Rangers have Ranger tabs and then are in a Ranger unit where that's what they do. They get on a helicopter, they go hit a target, they gain intel from that target, they remove themselves from that target back to a hiding spot in the swamps, kind of going back to the old Swamp Fox Patriot day where they would relocate themselves to somewhere and they would pull out all the maps, pull out all the things, and they would plan another one based on the intel that they just got. And then they would go from that swamp to, maybe it starts off with an ambush. And when they do the ambush, they take down a rocket launcher. And on this rocket launcher, they find out that there's paperwork that there could be some POWs at this camp. So they take that, they make another plan, then they go on to there, they take that target down, they get more info that there's a hostage. It could be endless. They could operate for 9 months without ever taking a break.
Yeah.
So very elite way of doing things. But they are direct action. They move in big giant numbers. Compared to like Green Berets, where Green Berets is They're called the quiet professionals. So the Green Beret just wants to get in, doesn't want anybody to know that they're a Green Beret, doesn't want anybody to know that they're in country or that they've ever been in that country. They want to do their job, give all that information to Ranger Battalion or to Delta, and then they want to get the fuck out, and they want nobody to ever know that they were there. And the Rangers go in and they just fuck shit up, and everybody knows that they were there because they destroy everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then SEALs are kind of like Green Berets, but they go in really fast, they get out and they write a book about it.
Yeah, right. The mandatory Navy SEAL book.
So Rangers have very high esprit de corps. It's actually in their motto. Every Ranger has to know the Ranger Creed, which is a pretty long creed. I know it all by heart. I still know it all to this day. But on the first line, it's recognizing that I volunteer as a Ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen profession. I will always endeavor to uphold the prestige, honor, and high esprit de corps of the Rangers. So being a Ranger, being a professional is what they are. They identify themselves as I am a Ranger, and they have to live by this creed, and everything, all their key principles and morals are listed out in this creed. Matter of fact, a good friend of mine named Chance Davis is a Ranger from Ranger Battalion with tons of combat deployments, and he was on Naked and Afraid, the long version, and he was one of the first guys to ever make it through, and he went full savage, where he went like loincloth, knife, painted himself in mud. And there was one scene of Naked and Afraid with Chance Davis where he's sitting there and he's rocking and he's just repeating the Ranger Creed over and over again like this, and he's holding his knife and he's like, recognizing I volunteer as a Ranger, fully knowing the hazards of my chosen, I always endeavor to. And it's very tense, it's very nuts, but these are Rangers. They are, I don't want to say brainwashed, but these dudes are conditioned to carry out the mission, though they be the lone survivor. So that is what Rangers are, not just Ranger tab guys, but real Rangers. They live, breathe, and die by this shit.
The squirrels, they get a squirrel patch. Is that what you said?
A Ranger tab.
No, I'm talking about
that little scroll.
Oh, scroll.
So you can have the yellow part.
You said squirrel, like secret squirrel shit.
No, so if you're looking at the Ranger,
all right, I'm glad I clarified that.
The two scrolls on YouTube's right now, you'll see a regular Ranger tab is just a black and yellow tab that says Ranger. The Ranger scroll underneath of that,
you get that.
You get that.
Okay.
But if you are an actual Ranger from Ranger Battalion, you will get the Ranger Battalion scroll, whether it be 2nd Bat, 5th Bat, 75th Ranger Bat.
And is it replaced or do you get both? You
get both. You wear both because you can be in Ranger Battalion and not have a Ranger tab yet. So there are guys that actually that have different jobs in Ranger Battalion. They just haven't gone to the Ranger school yet. They go to what's called their Ranger indoctrination program, the tryout. They go to a selection, they make it, and they say, good, you've got what it takes to be a Ranger, but we don't need to send you to Ranger school yet because you're going to deploy with us or you're going to go do some of these things.
Okay.
And then we're going to send you to the leadership portion of the school. But you're going to learn. If you're in Ranger Battalion, you're training all day, every day. And by the time you go to Ranger school, it's a breeze. It's easy because you've been doing it. These guys never stop doing Ranger school every day of their life. So very well trained.
What's going on?
Yes. On the YouTubes, we're posting pictures of the difference between Rangers and SEALs. To notice that all the SEALs have beautiful hair. They wear all the nice suits.
This is you guys talking, not me. I'm not talking crap about any of these people.
And the Rangers look like real hard motherfuckers. And I love it, dude. And listen, I enjoyed working with the Rangers. When I was in special operations, working with the Rangers all the time was awesome. Staying on fire bases when the Rangers would come in to assist us in high value targets. It was awesome, dude. They're a brotherhood and they're always working. It's like they show up, they get off the trucks. Nobody has to be told what to do, what to say. They know what tents need to go up. They know which ones need to go down. The ammo dudes are already on the ammo. The radio dudes are already on the radios. Everybody is working. When a conventional unit rolls in, people are like stretching, talking. Some sergeant's like, hey, you knuckleheads, knock it off. Go do this, go do that. When Ranger Battalion rolls in, it's like they already know what's got to be done. They're all professionals. Best in the class. Love working with those guys. Don't have a bad story about working with them. If you go to the bar with them, you're safe, but you might be going to prison. I don't know.
Or if you're a Crips gang in Tacoma, Washington, you might have a problem.
Right. So there we go. That is what a Ranger is. And that's what's important to know going on to this story. And these Rangers, they're from 2nd Ranger Battalion in Washington. These guys do nothing but train, like I said, all day long. And they are getting ready to do an airport seizure in Panama that they had probably been rehearsing for the course of a year. And they had already taken a trip, and Sergeant Bill Foulk had already been to Panama. So being that these are Rangers, they have already packed up the airplane, flown into Panama, and been like, hey, listen, anytime now, we might be hitting this. And I'm sure there are Green Berets on the ground saying, let's look at these tables. Let's go ahead and rehearse this. And they were probably rehearsing over and over again what this airport seizure was going to look like in the December of 1989, even though they never knew when it was going to happen, but they knew. And they were probably doing lots of direct action, lots of intel gathering with Green Beret units. And so these guys know what's coming eventually. So they come back from Panama. At this time, Bill Foulk was stationed in Washington and found a piece of real estate that was worth $10,000 at the time. And so he is like, hey, I'm in Washington, up and coming state. When I was at Fort Bragg, I lived with a dude. We bought a house. I say he bought a house for $10,000 in Rocky Mount, North Carolina. And we went over there. We ran all the bums out of the house. While we were there stripping the wooden floors, a man got shot in the street in front of the house and died. And a pastor came to our house,
Carolina,
that was sitting on our house and asked us why we were white and where we were buying a house in this neighborhood. And my buddy looked at him and said, I've never seen a house. I'm from Florida. I've never seen a house for 10 grand. So I bought it. Still to this day, he rents that house out for $700 a month. It's got new windows, new AC unit. It's really nice. It's on this real shitty block of Rocky Mount, North Carolina. Now, Rocky Mount's not too much unlike Tacoma in 1989. We're going to learn about that here in a minute.
Tacoma has a rough history, man.
Very rough history. And we're going to hear a lot about that here from BC in just a second. But just to preface this, it's not unlike a professional soldier like this to be thinking. When I was, matter of fact, when I went to SEER school, I had met this guy in selection. He was a sniper in Ranger Battalion and already had a Purple Heart from Iraq. And we went through selection together, and we actually met up again at SEER school. I think he was like one of the only dudes that I actually recognized when I got to SEER school. And while we were training before we went to the actual resistance portion of SEER, we had to navigate a series of underground tunnels that were very tight. And it was very dark. And there was about 5 of us in this tunnel. And this gentleman, I don't want to say his name because I don't know where he's operating at these days, but he was an expert. He was a CPA. So you got this dude who was a sniper in Ranger Battalion, but had cross-trained as a CPA and was like a tax nut. And while we're in these caves and tunnels, he was explaining the whole fair tax thing that was big in the early 2000s. He was talking about investments and how to do investments and how to move your taxes around. And so it's not unlike these professionals to be professionals in other aspects of their life, right? Just like you in real estate.
Yeah.
Like you're a great cop, but you also had real estate on the hand. So this dude was trying to increase his wealth, if you will. So
Gotcha.
He goes and he buys this house for 10 grand, which I did the math on a calculator, an inflation calculator.
You can't
and
do it all in your head?
10,000, huh?
You can't do it all in your head?
Dude, I'm a C student at best. You know this. You know this. So on the inflation calculator, that would be worth $34,900. So $35K now.
That's it.
And he bought that house for $15K. It would be worth $35K now. So right, like you understand
only based
now.
On inflation, but not necessarily market values. It could be worth
No.
$300,000
Now this house
yeah.
is actually valued at over $330,000.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly.
Actually, some people are saying today, actually, it's 400 and something thousand.
Yeah, yeah.
So
more sense.
But like, okay, so like in today's climate, imagine if we find a house for 15 grand, right?
Right.
We're stationed in Tacoma, Washington. We're going to be there for the next 6 years. We're like, dude, let's buy this house for 15 grand, fix her up, hold on to it, rent it out. And in 25 years, it's going to be worth $400,000. I mean, obviously he wasn't wrong.
Right.
Obviously he wasn't wrong because that's worth some money. He still owns that house to this day. But this house is at 2319 South Ash Street. And Ash Street was completely overran by Crips gang members. Here's a little video on the YouTubes of what it looks like.
What it looks like now, right?
What it looks like now. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's still the hood. It's still the hood. So actually that green 2-story house that you saw right at the end of that clip is actually going to be Bill Foulk's house still to this day. And if you watch that clip, which I can put a link to it at the end of this video, but the guy calls it, he goes, there's the devil's house right there. That's the devil with that flag. And that flag is a Ranger Battalion flag that's hanging in his front yard. So still to this day, this dude has a Ranger Battalion flag. Now, as we go through this story and break this whole thing down, you're going to be like, I think I've seen this before. And I thought that the whole time. I was like, dude, I feel like I've heard this story before. It's the movie Gran Torino. It's just not Asians, it's black people. This is Gran Torino. Like I'm almost 90% sure in my brain.
Took this concept and applied it to Detroit and put an old man in it. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, dude, they had to have taken that story from this. They had to, because everything that happens in this story is in the movie Gran Torino. Okay. I'm liking this so far.
I'm telling you. So how does so he gets to Ash Street. Sergeant Foulk gets to Ash Street, and it is an open air drug market. And a lot of the comments you'll see on a lot of the articles are, how do the cops not do their job? How do the cops let a town get overran? So I was like, you know what? I know how to explain this because I've seen it. I'm actually writing a book right now, and there's a big portion of my book that explains how one of the streets in Raleigh became this way. But I wanted to have somebody that actually has been there for fucking 20 plus years and knows everything about this, which we all know, the great BC Sanders from the Disruptors.
The great.
So I guess my first question, BC, is how does Ash Street in Tacoma, Washington in 1989, how does it become quote and unquote overran by gang members?
Yeah. So you got to remember, a lot of people, maybe they're listening, were not around during the crack epidemic. So you've got twofold. You've got the crack epidemic of the late 80s, and you've also got the expansion of gangs out of Los Angeles. So in the year 1988, the movie Colors is released. So when Colors comes out with Sean Penn, it's a big hit, and it's about Bloods and Crips in LA. And so that culture begins to kind of spread by word of mouth or just through the movies. But Tacoma, around that time in the mid 80s, started seeing Bloods and Crips in their area, especially Crips, which are Hilltop Crips in this incident. So by 88, 89, you're in the full throes of the crack epidemic. And you got to remember too, in that time, officers, you don't necessarily know the trend at the time when you're in it. So I'm quite sure a lot of the police officers were trying to figure out, one, what's going on with these drug sales? How is it expanding so quickly? Why is it becoming so violent? So I have to imagine in 89, they didn't have a whole lot of information about how crack is being sold, why it's being sold that way, why these gangs are spreading, what are they? You know what I mean? Like in 88, 89, it was just starting to hit the mainstream just because of the movie Colors.
So were there not gangs before 1989?
So there were gangs before. So let's just keep
in Tacoma. In
Tacoma, yeah.
Okay.
So they were that's what I'm saying. So if you go back and study and this specifically, and there are articles and entries on the internet and stuff. I didn't work Tacoma, so I have no clue of their accurate history or not. But there are articles that actually name very specific brothers who had cousins who had relocated to Tacoma in the mid 80s and brought that Crip culture with them and basically built that army, which became known as Hilltop Crips. But when you go back and study Crips, you go back all the way to about 1967, 68 in Los Angeles.
Wow.
That's when it starts. So a lot of people now will say, well, Crip, CRIP, stands for Community Revolution in Progress. That's actually in like a lot of the literature, handwritten notes and stuff that new members in Crips have to learn and stuff. But that's actually not true. So when you go back and look at that history, well, the reason I say that is,
so what if you got G-checked, which yes. G-checking means a higher ranking gang member comes in and grabs a younger one and G-checks him, asks him a series of questions. If he gets it wrong, he might get his ass whooped or he might get some kind of punishment. But now if they were to get G-checked and they say, what was it?
Yeah. Community Revolution in Progress. They would be correct.
They would be correct. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, so you look at it the way.
Sounds very communist.
So, well, you go back and study the infusion of the Black Panther movement, the infusion of becoming more militant instead of gangsters, so to speak. So you start to see this sales pitch that becomes back then in the, late 70s, early 80s, this sales pitch of we're about the community. We're not a gang that's here to destroy a community. That's why that takes on a life of its own. So you'll hear people in public speaking or speaking out and saying, well, Crips aren't that bad for the community because of this. But really, when you go back to all that history, it starts with a core group of a couple of juveniles in Los Angeles, doing crimes, purse snatchings, that sort of thing. And one of the members of that, now this is the way the legend goes, going all the way back, is that one of the members had rickets or had a leg like deformity where he limped or walked with an exaggerated limp. And the neighborhood kids would call him Cripple. And so it started to get cut down to Crip. So, well, I mean, so you got to think if you're a kid and everybody's calling you that. Anyway, that's how they were identified. And then it kind of grew from that. And then once they went into juvenile facilities and people started picking up on this Crip vibe, it just took on a life of its own and became an entire movement. So then you just have all these separate sets, SET sets. Okay. So those spread out from LA. So when someone, and you can read it online or you hear it in some of these YouTube videos about this, when they say Hilltop Crips, Hilltop is geographically the area of Tacoma.
Okay.
Not the block, in other words.
Right.
Yeah.
So like in the wine world, you have your appellation, which is like Sonoma. Then you have your vineyard, which might be like Oakville. You know what I mean? Then you have your winemaker. So like, yeah, you could say it's a Sonoma cab, but essentially was made in Oakville. Yeah. So that's in the county of Sonoma.
Yeah. So probably Hilltop Crips had some origin in a larger block, maybe being traced back to LA. It's kind of what I was saying there. But
gotcha.
Yeah. So Tacoma they had their problem before that. It wasn't like overnight, the way I understand it.
Right. Kind of the research I did is before 1986 is when that street really got bad. It was mainly blacks and Cubans. Mm-hmm. And the Cubans had been relocated because of, at that time, the Cubans were coming over here by the tens of thousands. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them were relocating to Washington, which is as far away from Cuba as you can get in the United States. But I like some of the takes here on this story is that the cops just kind of ignored what was going on Hilltop. And at this time, community policing was actually first a term that was thrown out. So before that, you had the cops of the 70s who were beating people over the heads with their maglite flashlights, fucking baton.
That's when police became known as pricks. Police reinvigorating in their communities through crime kicking.
I thought he was being serious. I'm always in serious mode. I forget y'all joke a lot. I was like, damn, he's teaching me something here.
I wish I would have thought of something a little bit easier to roll off the tongue on that one, but we can come. If you're in the chat, come up with a good acronym for prick for cops instead of, what they said Crips was.
So they,
police really invigorating. I don't know. Anyway, go ahead in the chat. Continue.
So the cops, they were now like, you can't beat people over the head with a fucking baton or a flashlight anymore. You've got to,
dang it,
got to go in there and you got to respond to some calls. You got to be nice. You got to be kind. And of course, like radio traffic, we heard from 1989 was our last story that we did last week, right?
What year was that? Was that 80? Was that 89 or was that 80?
It was either 88, 89, somewhere around the time frame.
May 9th, 1980.
You kind of see
1980.
Was it 1980?
I think it was 1980. The Norco shootout.
Okay. Yeah, it was. It was because I was making fun of
May 9th, 1980.
The futuristic 1990s looking radio. So now cops aren't bashing skulls anymore or anything like that, and the street gets overtaken. Now, a lot of the people in these messages say like, well, what's the cop's purpose? Well, Mike, did you have any territories where you worked that it was just a hot spot?
Well, in an area where we bordered, yes. But see where Detroit had a TAC unit, and for a while they did have a gang unit, but we had like a gang book sitting in our offices that we could add stuff to or review. But a lot of what we were dealing with or would run into would be like they were very loosely organized and they were more wannabe. It wasn't that you couldn't take them like to be not dangerous, but you would catch a group of 15-year-old kids jacking car tires or something, and they would have their tats like mob, money over bitches, and what, like they were just literally just making shit up and then calling themselves things. I do believe there's been various levels of organization and
Was there any
intensity.
streets? Was there any streets that were just like you knew that was a gang street?
Well, there's entire areas in the city of Detroit. I didn't.
That's where I'm
like I said, I
getting,
didn't
right.
work proper, but yeah. I mean, but that's again, you would know that area has influence from some group of people, but the sort of like
reason why I
Bloods,
ask,
Crips, it wasn't ever like that big in the area as far as gang violence goes in the sense like you would see it in LA or whatever. But I'm not an expert in this area and didn't really work in that capacity either.
the reason why I ask this is because a lot of people say, well, why don't the cops just go into these neighborhoods and clean it up? And I think the reason why the cops don't just go into these neighborhoods and clean it up is because the people of the neighborhood don't want it cleaned up. So when you go in there to clean it up, all you get is harassed, you get yelled at, you get called a racist, you get told to get out, and you can't even do a traffic stop in those areas without the dude trying to run away from you, fighting you, beating you drunk, and then you shoot him and you go to jail for 25 years, as we see with the Patrick Leola case going on right now. So it's really funny. On one hand, you say, why can't you clean the street up? But at the other hand, you send the cops over there to clean it up, and everybody takes the side of the people who just want to keep committing crimes in the area. So you have these blocks all over the United States that are completely overran with crime. And when the cops get in there, the whole neighborhood comes together and talks shit about the cops because they're all doing bad shit. They're all doing bad things. But then everybody outside looks in and says, yeah, they take the side of the criminals. It's crazy. But then on the other spectrum, they say, well, why can't the cops clean that up? The reason why the cops can't clean that up is because every time we try, the people in the community complain, and then because they're committing crimes in the area, and then all the people that are not cops and they're outside the area go ahead and want to blame the cops too.
Or sometimes citizens on the front end will do that in the street. They'll call you names. They'll show out. But then on the back end, you're getting the phone call or they're catching you through the cut in the backyard and they're telling you, they're hiding stuff here. They're doing stuff here, but they can't put that face out in the neighborhood because they live there.
Right.
So then it's almost like, they have to put that front out so that the gang goes, oh yeah, all the neighborhood supports us. When in reality, a lot of times neighborhoods that get flipped like that, you build sources within the neighborhood that no one ever knows about in order to get that information so that you can go after it and you don't have like an Ash Street where it just gets completely embedded in entrenched.
So, and this, there were 6 cops dedicated to Ash Street. And in 1989, in that summer, this incident is going to take place in September in the fall. But in the summer, the police chief takes 4 of the 6 officers off of Ash Street and puts them out into the other parts of Tacoma where people are more appreciative of them. And it kind of makes sense back then, right? Like we know now that that's not a good idea.
Right.
But I think what the chief back then was thinking was, well, if you got a whole neighborhood that's an open air drug market with prostitutes and crack, and every time we go in there, shit gets bad, my cops get hurt, we'll just fucking stop going there. I'll put 2 cops in there just to protect the few that are in there that can't move out and aren't doing bad shit. But I'm not going to put 6 cops down here to try to work on something that the people of Ash Street don't even care about. We'll just let you guys have your shithole. And I think that was the attitude.
Yeah. And I'm not saying that Tacoma had this policy, but other agencies have been called out back around that time for basically what they call depolicing, where they wouldn't do that. Like you're saying, where they'd either fall back because of officer safety reasons or like that, like they get overrun, like where they don't feel like anyone's supporting them.
Well,
so
we had
just
streets,
let that stuff happen.
We had streets in Raleigh, one particular street on my beat that I managed. And it was Corey Street and heavy gang presence, heavy shooting presence. But everybody that lived on Corey Street was a gang member. And so I would tell my rookies when I trained them, I said, look, if you want to start shit, come here. This is where you're going to start. But just know that you're going to get a complaint. and you're not going to get any community help. I.e., if somebody runs, nobody's helping you. They're not going to tell you where he went. They're going to tell you the opposite. They're going to allow those people that are running to hide inside of their houses, and you're not going to be able to find them. And they're going to complain on you, and they're going to lie about what, if somebody gets shot, they will be the ones that say that cop shot him. I've seen it happen where obviously everybody's like, fuck out of here. This guy's been shot like 4 hours ago. I just got here. Like, you know what I mean? This is ridiculous, but that's what they do. They stir up the
He's
trouble.
already had a funeral. That's the guy that killed him. Wait, what?
It really is. It really is like that. And
I
think
complaint.
one of the first times I ever got to work with BC was when Cordy Street was going on. I contacted him and said, hey, I've got this street in the town that I work in. What can I do to fix this? And he was like, well, let me get the ins and outs of it. Tell me what's going on. And, really the plan that he had provided was multiple pronged, and I didn't have the ability to ever do something like that. So for me and my experiences, I fucking just stayed off of it. If a call went out on Corey Street, I responded to it, but I didn't just roll down Corey Street to try to fix the problems. I didn't go down Corey Street to say that guy's selling dope, because I knew he was going to run, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to catch him, and I knew I wasn't going to get any help from the community to catch him. So fuck it. Let's just roll out. Let's leave. And I think that is how a lot of these neighborhoods get overran. But we see at the end of this that they're going to overrun this town, and they are going to retake it back. And this incident is actually going to it's actually going to change policing as Tacoma, Washington knows it. And this street is actually going to be one of the highest valued streets in the city. So everything that Ranger Foulk did, Sergeant Sergeant Foulk, however you want to call it, everything that he did actually helped. It actually panned out for him. So the way the story kind of plays out from here is Sergeant Foulk buys this house, and he gets there and he realizes that the value of this investment is not going to go up because of one problem. What do you think that problem is?
The Crips.
That there is an open air drug market. There's rape. There is assaults. There is domestic violence all over this street. It's infested with crime, and nobody cares. And there are 3 trap houses, including one trap house in front of his house, where it's just an open air McDonald's. It's like a drive-through. Cars pull up, they get out, they make the deal. Sometimes they try to rob the dealer of his money or his drugs. There are conflicting gang fights that happen because one man steals from him and he is a different sect of the Hilltop. And so it's just, for lack of a better term, chaos on this street. And so he's like, well, shit, dude, I just bought this house to flip it. I'm never going to flip it if these assholes do this. So he talks to this woman that lives on the street, and she's kind of going to be one of the people. Her name is Miss Luckett, and she wants change as well. Miss Luckett doesn't like what's going on. She's known in the community as a Spitfire, quote. She's the type who took down license plates. She took no guff, and she called police on a regular basis. She's a Karen.
Or maybe she's a good
Is she
citizen.
though? Or is she the old lady that everybody knows not to mess with because she's like respected? And if there's one person that can get away with saying exactly what she thinks to these gangbangers' face, it's her. She can say it. They won't harm her. They don't steal her shit. They don't break into her stuff. They don't mess with her because she's just she's like their grandma telling them that they're sinners.
Right.
So she kind of gets a pass.
But she's 33 at the time, and she has a young she has a young son. And what really pissed her off was that this son couldn't go down to the local grocery mart because he was wearing a red t-shirt from his favorite TV show. And these gang members harassed him and took his shirt. He came back shirtless. And so the mom is going to be forever pissed. Now we have on the opposite spectrum another woman named Renee Hartlett. And Renee Hartlett was 18, and she lives with her boyfriend, Marco Simmons, who is, quote, the main dog on the block. So he is what do you call the
for them, that would be like an OG. Actually like an OG, or maybe even, just high status.
Does OG stand for original
gangster? Yeah. So if you go back and like trace their chain of command probably for that time and that frame, it would be like triple OG, double OG, OG, OYG, OBG. It's like original young gangster, original baby gangster, original tiny gangster, and you start getting down these brackets. There's multiple levels, but yeah.
Goodness gracious. I'd be lucky to be an OBGYN.
I went full nerd on you there.
No, I like it. It's fascinating things. But Marco Simmons going to be the OG, the main dog. And
I wonder if gang members get tired of being OG, like an OBGYN probably gets tired of that. Like the last thing they want to see when they get home
is a vagina.
Like,
a vagine.
Last thing I want to do is gangbang again after all day doing it.
Anyway, Shirley Luckett, 33, and this other girl, they're gonna not get along. And they're obviously because Renee Hartlett, his boyfriend, is the gang member that leads the street, and Miss Luckett, 33, is going to be the one that's, like you said, the grandmother, like I want to clean this shit up. I want my son to be able to go to the grocery store without y'all taking his fucking shirt away because it's a red shirt. This is ridiculous.
Right.
It's dumb. So Luckett is going to actually kind of team up with Foulk when he moves in, and she's kind of give Foulk the lay of the land. This is the house right across the street from you. Again, she's the neighborhood busybody. But in a good way. This is why your homeowner associations are the way they are. It's because you got to have a Shirley Luckett on board. She's going to give the scope out. Those are your neighbors. They're drug dealers. They're rapists. They're bad, bad people. And they just rule this street. And my kid can't even go down to the local market with his red shirt on because they'll bully him and take it away. Now, remember I told you guys the movie Gran Torino. Remember we got the little Asian kid walking down the street, gets called out, wearing the wrong shit. He's not even a gang member.
Yep.
Right? A lot of similarities here. So he ends up deciding, Foulk is like, all right, well, if I'm going to raise, and remember, these are operators, planners, and operations planners. These dudes,
and it's not just him living there. There's other rangers with him there.
No, it's just him.
Okay, it's just him. Okay,
just him. So he buys this house, but remember, this guy is professional at planning and operations and taking things and seizing things. It's in his blood. So he gets this house, and all of a sudden he has an obstacle, a ranger obstacle. My obstacle is, here's my mission. Buy this cheap house, sell it for fuck tons more money before I get out of Tacoma and I get moved on. So I got like six years to raise the value. What's my hurdle? What's my problem? My problem is that it's overran by gangs, and this is the house that's doing it. These three houses are doing it. So I've got to, this is my mission. I got to fix it. And so he says, okay, I'm going to go over and I'm going to talk to these Crip gang member boys, and I'm going to tell them, hey, we're done. Stop. He does. He goes to the house of Marco's house, allegedly.
So pause just for a second. We do have someone in the chat named Kathy claiming to have been there during this situation.
Really?
So just
my
a heads
best friend
up,
was married to Bill Foulk at this time, and I was there for this shootout.
In quotes. I don't know.
Okay. Kathy,
anyway, I'm just saying, hey, I'm just
Kathy
saying. Hey,
Mays, hit her up in the privates chat somehow. I don't know if that's
not a thing.
So, there's something you producers can do to get this chick on the back end. I'd love to have her on a night shift, and she can relive this story with us. So, and then tell us what we missed, what we didn't miss. But Kathy Mays, we're gonna reach out to you somehow, or you reach out to us.
Failure to stop one@gmail.com. That's how you can contact us.
Never even heard of that. Failure to stop one@gmail.com. Perfect.
That's
so he allegedly goes over to this house, and he says, hey guys, listen, we're not going to do this anymore. I live here. I don't want to see it. Knock it off. And they basically tell him he's fucked. Like, get out of here. We're coming after you. And he's like, if you do, it's going to be some issues. So Mr. Foulk goes on this battle where he's like, I am going to clean up this street. So he starts with the police. Starts calling 911. Him and Miss Luckett, they're calling 911. The cops come, and the cops basically take a note, take a report.
Right.
They go back, they type it up, and they leave because they know, and I know this as a police officer myself, I know that when you respond to somewhere like Quarry Street and you have somebody that's pissed about it, one, it's usually a slumlord millionaire. And a slumlord millionaire is going to look very similar to what Mr. Foulk looks like right now.
He's a slumlord millionaire.
Now, what is a slumlord millionaire? What do we call a slumlord millionaire? In the police department jargon, a slumlord millionaire is somebody who goes in, buys a house for 10 grand on one of these shitty streets, and then he rents it out for like $1,200 or whatever the full price of their welfare checks are. So it's like, you know what you're getting paid from the government, and he'll go in and take that exact money and put nothing else into the house, knowing that these people are felons. They can't have a credit check. He gets them to sign paperwork under the things. He can evict them at any notice. And they basically take advantage of these people, which leave them left with nothing else to do except sling drugs and prostitute. Their ACs don't work, so they sit outside, which creates more crime, but they can't go anywhere else because they're convicted felons and they can't get an apartment. So these slumlord millionaires buy a piece of shit house, put very little to anything into it, and then they turn around and flip it as a rental for everything that they got, because it's their only choice. So I'm guessing that these cops probably like, oh, here's this dickhead white guy comes in, buys a shitty house in this fucking neighborhood and, you know, wants to rent it out. So I'm not going to go fuck around with the neighbors because it's just going to cause chaos. They're going to run from me for one. Two, their gang members are not going to talk to me. So I'll just take my report and leave. And that is very frustrating, as it should be, to Bill Foulk. You got anything to say on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, if you could use an analogy, it feels like we're kind of beating up on patrol sometimes, trying to address a problem. If you think of a patrol officer as like a family doctor, and then like a gang unit or a drug unit as an oncologist, meaning you have a severe problem, which is Crips in this neighborhood. That's your cancer. You're going to need an oncologist to come in and just remove all that, or maybe a ranger in the new neighborhood. But the idea of that, you know, patrol can only work so much of this, especially at that time.
And not to shit on patrolmen, but patrolmen have like if I'm a patrol officer and I have Corey Street as my beat, and I know it's a high crime area, and I know that gang members get shot there all the time. I know that shit goes bad, but I also have a neighborhood right down the road in an area called Sunnybrook where all these shitheads from Corey Street go to steal shit from. So I'm going to spend all my time over on Sunnybrook where all the good people live that are being bullied by these guys. And I'm going to patrol their neighborhood to keep the guys that are bullying them from stealing. And then I'm really not going to give a fuck about Corey Street because they're all shitheads that live there. In my brain, that's what I'm thinking, right? As a patrol, I'm not saying I'm right in that thought, but you know, my thought is, okay, let those guys just be dirtbags. But I'm going to go over here and I'm going to protect these guys over here on Sunnybrook from those dirtbags. And so I'm not going to really patrol Corey Street that much. I'd rather control the one neighborhood that is actually full of good people. But what happens to Corey Street is more gang violence, and it gets bigger and bigger, and then it begins to spread to neighboring streets. And there are a couple neighboring streets, and then it gets bigger and bigger. So really, it sucks. But as a field cop that doesn't really have a lot of, tools, let's say, I don't have a lot of, I don't have a lot of time, right? I don't have a lot of time where I can go and analyze and look and study and come up with an ops plan because I have other calls in other neighborhoods that I need to take care of. And so I think that Bill Foulk is like, no, I'm one of the good guys here and you're not helping me. Mm-hmm. And there's a breakdown in communication where the cop's saying, dude, I'd love to help you, but there's two of us.
Yeah.
And this is one street. And I've got a lot of good people that I can go help, or I can come and help these pieces of shit.
That's probably about right. Or just overwhelmed in general. Like I said earlier, if you don't know what a hand-to-hand looks like, or you don't have those resources to do surveillance.
Well, if I've got two cops to patrol 18 different streets, I don't have time to sit on the one street and just take people to jail over and over again. Over and over again for the sake of doing it. Because they're not going to stop. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to try to stop a hand-to-hand. They're going to run. Now I've tied up every officer in the area on this one guy that's running, and I'm not going to make an arrest, and I'm going to have nothing to show for the day, and I've left like 6 good people in the neighboring neighborhood hanging on their I got my wallet stolen call. So Foulk's going to get really upset with this. And then he puts up a camera upstairs. This is 1989.
What kind of cameras he got in 1989, dude? Oh my gosh!
I'm guessing it was probably something like Back to the Future, where he sets it up on the tripod, the big giant camera where you slide the VHS tape inside of it.
The whole tape inside.
So
Yeah,
it's not like
it's like
today.
a full shoulder rig.
Yes. So it's not like today, like on Rocky, where he comes in with a new video camera because he's rich. I'm rich. I got that Ranger money. So he comes in with
the robot from Rocky 4.
Yes. And he's got the camera following the robot, with the big light on it. So that's exactly the kind of camera he's going to have in 1989. So it's not like he just put like a deer cam up in the upstairs where nobody knew it. No, this is like a big
trail cam. It's not like Simply Safe.
Yeah, it's not Simply Safe. This is like a real man's camera. So everybody on the street can look up in this, outward facing window and see this massive camera on a tripod facing everybody. So there's this bit, there it is on our YouTubes. So he's got this big camera and he's filming the streets and he's filming these open hand drug transactions. And he's going to share that with the police. And the police are like, yeah, that's great. But I mean, we would have to bring like 12 officers in here to catch that guy for slinging like a little bit of crack, which the DAs are just going to let go. It's also important to know that
late 80s, they might have locked him up for 50 years for a couple crack rocks. I don't know.
Yeah, because right now Reagan had just come out with his war on drugs and his wife come out with the DARE program. The Just Say No, which BC's actually wearing a DARE hat. I was wondering if that's why he wore it, but this is actually at the time. Now, I've always said that just because you're the wife of the president doesn't mean you know shit. We didn't vote you in.
Isn't that a funny thing? Like they always have to have some type of special program or task. Michelle Obama needed to like make lunches great again or whatever it was. At
George
school.
Bush's wife doing her dumb shit.
Yeah. Or reading rainbow shit. I don't know what they all do. It's like, we didn't elect you. We don't care what you're doing. Just go vacuum the White House. Go make the president a sandwich.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, boy, it's
That's
hard
what
to
I
keep
voted
sponsors.
for. I voted for a clean White House.
Oh man, maybe if she was doing something else, she wouldn't have to have an unpaid 20-year-old intern in there giving BJs. But anyway, so she's gonna come out with this Just Say No thing, which I don't have a problem with that. But like again, it's like the first sergeant's wife on base, who's always trying to run around and be like, who's your platoon sergeant? And you're like, shut the fuck up. You're not a first sergeant. You didn't go to boot camp. Shut up. You're his wife. Fuck off. So she comes out with this Just Say No thing. So there is this war on drugs, big drug pandemic. Anyway, nobody likes Bill Foulk's camera. So the Crip dudes, they try to shoot this thing out of his window. So they take some pop shots, allegedly with a pellet gun. Some people say a 22. Either way, they're going to shoot at this camera almost on a weekly basis. They're going to throw rotten pears at the windows of his house. They peg his house with rotten pears because it's the end of summer and the pears are starting to go bad. And so it's escalating. So they started out with throwing pears at this house. That wasn't working. So then they start shooting the window of the house upstairs. Well,
that's not going to make Ranger Foulk too happy, probably.
It is not. So Ranger Foulk and Miss Luckett decide they're going to put together a community watch meeting. And they get the community together and they try to get a couple officers and they say, enough's enough. We've got to take back this neighborhood, blah, 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 blah. And so they come up with a pretty good plan of how they're just going to overload 911 with calling 911. And they do this. But this pisses off the Crip gang members a lot. And they're like, okay, you're going to call the cops on us all the time? You're done.
Out the OGs want to keep on G'ing and they don't want to get interrupted.
So they really step it up and they start to have these confrontations with Mr. Foulk. Foulk has a barbecue with this community watch barbecue. During the barbecue, it was like on a weekend barbecue, a couple of gang members show up and confront Foulk in the middle of the barbecue. Foulk says, we're not going to stop having this barbecue. He explains what it is, that it's a community watch. It's to celebrate.
He's like, remember what your gang name stands for, young man?
Yeah.
Let's live that out together.
We're living it out. We're living it out right here. We're doing what you were supposed to be doing. So he does this barbecue and he doesn't bow down or cower down to these Crip gang members. And they're going to leave. And one boy's going to turn around and do the old Shooter McGavin.
All right.
And the other boy says, yeah, we're going to shoot this motherfucker up. And Bill Foulk hears this and he's like, huh,
Interesting.
Oh, okay. So he goes into this house. He's already called 911 a ton of times. He calls 911 again, and 911 says, best thing to do is just shut it down. Shut the barbecue down. No crime has been committed. You don't have a good description of the guy who did the finger guns.
Something good for the community.
Yeah, they're like, protect yourself. Don't do the barbecue tonight. Well, Foulk is like, not going to happen. So he calls 11, I think it's 11, 10 or 11. Because I think there was 12 total. No, they one account says 15, but the police report from the Associated Press said that there were 12. I think it was 12 Rangers. So he's going to be the 12th. So he's going to call 11 Rangers. This is according to Associated Press. Now there's been a bunch. A special operations website has done a story on this. Soft Rep, Military Times, military.com, the Army Times. A lot of people have done stories on this. I'm just going off of the Associated Press article from September of 1989. So I went back and read that. Tacoma, Washington. This was written on September 26th, 1989. So he calls 11 of his buddies, according to this article. Could be as many as 15. And 4 of these Rangers are actually going to be black guys. Because in a Ranger battalion, you don't even see in color. You're working way too hard to care about gay, straight, bi, confused, black, or white. Yep. When you're in Ranger battalion, you're working. You're humping. And there ain't time to worry about any other bullshit. Mm-hmm. You're not even slaying chicks.
Do you think that these Rangers, when they started, when Bill called them all, he made sure that they all had contacted Policy Genius?
Well, I'm going to get to Policy Genius because Policy Genius is going to come into play here very shortly.
All right.
And I'm hoping at this point, being a good supervisor, being a good squad leader, as Sergeant Bill Foulk was, he was a squad leader on a Ranger battalion, in Ranger battalion with a Ranger team. So this guy is a big deal. And I would guess a good leader like that would have told his men about Policy Genius before getting them involved in what's about to happen. So Bill Foulk calls his boys, his squad. Now he's the sergeant, right? This would be like if your sergeant calls you and says, "Hey boys, this is the story. This is what's going on." And that's what's great about Ranger Battalion, because nobody is going to be like, "Sorry, boss, not going to happen." But they also know that they're professionals enough that this just doesn't happen. A sergeant in Ranger Battalion is of the highest standard. So this would never just happen. These guys don't just do things on a whim. They don't do things without intense planning and professionalism. So you get your sergeant that calls and says, "I got an issue." They already know it can't be solved any other way because he would have tried to solve it already. This is a problem that could not be solved. And so they say, "Where do you need us?" Okay, this isn't like the movies, like where you have close friends where you're like, "Yeah, my friends would come over and bury a mother with me."
Yeah,
they'll do it. No, these are guys that are Rangers that say, "Okay, yeah, we understand that you got a problem. Let's go ahead and figure it." They're not just saying it, and they're not just doing it by like killing somebody and burying them in this. No, they're going to very well plan this out. They're not going to use emotions. They're not going to use hype or anything like that. They're going to be very systematic about this. All right, where do you want us? Let's go ahead and get a plan together, and let's see how we're going to execute this problem. And let's see how we can do it the most efficient and effective way. So they show up to the house, all packing shotguns, rifles, 22 pistols, revolvers, every gun that they got, and they're going to show up, and they're actually going to go in the backyard, and they're going to do this op order style. They're going to dig in positions. Bill Foulk is going to say, "Hey, nobody dies. Nobody dies. We're not going to die, and they're not going to die. So you're going to put effective fire on these guys, but we can't throw rounds out into the wind because we can't kill any civilians."
So
and
what
also,
does that mean? Effective fire down on those guys. Like
what we're going to do is we're going to pin them in by putting bullets on things in that general area.
Gotcha.
And they know the frame of the car, not through the door of the car. Hey, shoot at the tires, skip rounds off of the road, shoot at the dumpster, shoot at anything but them. Because if you're going to try to shoot them and we miss, we're going to hit civilians. And he briefs it. We're going to put effective fire to keep their heads down, but we're not going to shoot them, and we're not going to shoot any civilians.
And we're not going to get shot.
And we're not going to get shot. So that's a lot. That is a lot. That's a lot of prep and planning.
Thank you to Officer
Brandon
Tatum.
Officer
stopping in,
Tatum
dropping
coming
a
in
super
big
chat
with the
in
hundo
on
chat.
The YouTubes.
Oh
Baller.
man,
oh my gosh.
we love him. We love Officer
Not many
Tatum.
people know that Officer Tatum actually was a Hilltop Crip, and that's in
That is not
'89.
true.
And this situation turned his life around. Not many people know that about him. So we'll get him on to tell his story from Crip to cop.
Yeah, heard it here first.
Absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. But I have become a huge Officer Tatum fan in the last
Tatum's
couple
a man.
of weeks.
What a dude of integrity. And obviously, you guys, if you know of our channel, you probably guaranteed know of Tatum's channel. So we commend his content to you. Good stuff.
And congrats on his new radio show that he is now
nationally syndicated.
Nationally syndicated. So
Salem
big
Radio
props to that.
syndication.
So these guys, they have a very good plan. Good Ranger plan, and they are going to take up fighting positions, and they're going to put in their no doubt that when a Ranger puts in a fighting position, just like at my house, we have windows and I have range cards for the window. So I without a doubt would believe that these boys had are drawn up range cards, and kind of what that is they're going to say this is our fighting position, and our left limit is going to be that tree. It means we're not going to shoot anything that's left of that tree, because there's a house over here or there's something here, and we're not going to shoot any further right than this over here. And then we're going to put 2 more Rangers on both of those right and left limits that are going to cross those left and right limits, and they're going to protect that. So now we're not just spraying and praying. We've got effective fire, and we know the ranges. We got range cards. We know how far out this car is going to be. We know how far out this dumpster is going to be. We know where we're going to put this effective fire, and there's going to be some really great planning in a very short amount of time, because that's what these guys do. That's why I spent so much time telling you at the beginning of the show, this is what Rangers do. They don't just lay down and they just start shooting. These guys are professionals. They're surgeons, baby. These guys know what they're doing. So they lay in, and they've got all their sectors of fire, interlocking sections of fire. What does that mean? Well, they're going to interlock their fields of fire. So if I shoot this way, another Ranger is going to shoot this way, and we have a big giant X to move through. So nobody can get to our fighting position, because we're shooting. One is shooting in that to the right, and one is shooting to the left, creating an X that nobody can move in on us. I mean, these guys got it dialed in, and they had it dialed in on this fine evening. And so they set in, they turn all the lights off at the barbecue. The lights go dim. I'm sure at this point, they turn the lights off.
They shut it down, or they went zero dark
barbecue. They went zero day. They cleaned up the barbecue. They shut all the lights off in the yard, in the house, so that they couldn't be seen. Right. Matter of fact, if you read from some of the old Ranger manuals, that the best time that Rangers attack is BMNT, before morning nautical twilight, and BENT, before evening nautical twilight. And what that means is that's when the sun is just coming up or just going down, and everything is blue outside. And so your eyes won't focus. Your eyes can't focus. That's when the Indians attack. So if you're a Ranger and you're already out at BMNT or BENT, evening nautical twilight, your eyes are already kind of adjusted, because you've been out there and you know what target you're looking at. So the enemy, they're going to be surprised, and their eyes aren't going to be able to focus on the intruders or on the ambush. And so these guys know all of those tactics and all these skills. They're going to do this like they're like Indians from the old days. So they shut everything down in the evening hours. This is going to happen right at that evening nautical twilight time period. And as they lie in wait, one of the Crip gang members drives by, and a shot rings out. They take a shot. None of the Rangers fire back, because they didn't hear the hiss of the bullet yet. And then all of a sudden, from the house across the street, more rounds begin to rip through. And it is apparent to Foulk, Ranger Russell Nolte, and all the other Rangers that were there that they were indeed in a firefight. And so they began putting effective fire back at these Crip gang members. And the next course of about 10 minutes, 300 rounds from the Rangers are going to be fired, and nothing is going to be hit. No person is hit. No innocent bystander is hit.
Say 300 rounds?
300 rounds.
There was a firefight!
Yes. There was a firefight. Now, Miss Luckett is at the house at this time, and I would love to talk to her as well, because you know how that went. They're like, Miss Luckett, she was at the barbecue in the morning. They're like, look, you need to go home, sweetheart, because the cops ain't coming. We're going to deal with this our way. That guy gave me the finger gun. The guy said he's coming, and we're going to take care of this our way. So you just run along home, Miss Luckett, and tuck yourself in the house, and by tomorrow morning, you can help clean up bodies. And she was like, not a chance. Not a fucking chance. So where was Miss Luckett during this firefight? Laid down in the house. She hit the floor and laid down.
In Foulk's house, not hers.
No, not at her house. She's like, no, I'm staying for this. Like, I'm all in.
I'm on
like,
the X, baby.
I'm not done with my pork and beans. I'm going to finish my pork and beans. I'm going to watch the show. So during the firefight,
Grab your sparklers, kids.
Miss Luckett calls 911. Now, during this firefight, one of the Rangers was upstairs. He's going to be injured slightly, and that is only because of breaking glass splintered the top of his head. So one of the bullets came through, hitting the camera, which this Ranger was probably posted up in that window frame, putting rounds down. And when the window broke, shards of that probably went into his forehead, but he was okay. Nobody was seriously injured. There is rumor that one gang member was hit and drove to a neighboring county to go in there.
Okay.
So the police show up, and it's just really going to piss the police chief off. He's really, really upset. And the first officer gets on scene. He comes down, and one of the gang members takes a shot at the police. And so he, on the record, they had put on the record that he squealed tires backwards and backed out of the block like hauled ass.
So the cop pulls up and starts taking fire.
Yeah.
Basically, in his patrol unit.
I'm out.
Okay.
So Ranger Foulk began to move on. Now they know that shit's getting bad because there's about 64 muzzle flashes that they were able to put together from 64 different locations. So there's an estimated 60 to 65 gang members shooting at Sergeant Foulk's house. And there's Rangers all over the front yard, Rangers on the front porch, Rangers in the windows. I mean, this is like a movie, dude. Could you imagine that? Like,
it's freaking epic.
Just epic. These dudes just getting to work, and they're all calm. And they in their report was that they could see the gang members running up and down, trying to get cover, and the Rangers just stayed laid in. And when they saw that the chaos was starting, when they had kind of won, they started advancing on the enemy, and they actually pin one of these shooters in, and they kind of pin him over towards the cops and the cops are able to catch the two guys. Now the police in this case are going to arrest two gang members, and I'm guessing back then, correct me if I'm wrong, did they not have the gun residue?
89. You know what? I would probably say no. I bet they did not.
Because
you're saying like gunshot residue,
yeah,
where they can swab a hand and say, there's some elements from. Yeah, I would say they probably did not have it back then.
Because they catch two of these guys, both with 9mm handguns. One that had only 9 rounds in the pistol. No, I'm sorry, had no rounds in the pistol and 9 rounds were in his pocket. So they are able to charge him. He pleads guilty to assault and gets a 22-month sentence. So one of the most epic firefights, and one bad guy gets 22 months. He ends up doing 18. Now, one of the things that I was going through in this story that you don't hear about was that immediately after this, the Rangers get in zero trouble. Their guns are confiscated. There is one over theatric video, and it's a great video. I shouldn't say over theatric in a bad way, but like, he's a storyteller. We're not storytellers.
Yeah, what would they get in trouble for if they were on their property,
right,
defending themselves from people shooting them? I mean, there's nothing really to be in trouble for, right? Like if you're just discharging a firearm in public, maybe that's one thing, but if you were being fired upon and doing that, I don't know. Dead Media does say that 1971 for gunshot residue. Not that it was common.
Tacoma had it though.
Yeah, I'm saying not that it was common for departments to have that on hand, especially
might have been like a federal. That'd probably be like a
basic
federal
patrol response level. Yeah.
No. Wow. What would be the rule to this firefight? Do you think you're a responding officer?
Just looking at it from here, like Mike's saying, you're on your property. There's already been a clear threat made. They've already, it sounds like they've already filed reports or at least contacted police like, hey, this is what's going on. It sounds like on the surface, they're protecting the property. Now, if they would have pursued and chased them 2 or 3 blocks in trucks and stuff and had gunfights, that's different. But I don't know. I think on the property, I think
you're in your house clear. On your porch and you're getting shot at and you want to shoot back.
Yeah.
Hey, well,
yeah.
So they're going to have their guns confiscated. Now, in this story that I saw on YouTube, they say that there's no record of those cops getting their guns back. I'd have to talk to Ranger Foulk and the boys to see if they got their guns back. I can't imagine that they didn't.
Right.
But it could have been a thing. It's like, hey guys, we're not going to pursue this. The DA is not going to pursue this at all. If you'll agree to just let those guns be.
Yeah, they were probably seized because they're evidence of the firefight. And just like you said, if somebody shows up a county away and is shot, and then they can trace it back, then now you potentially would have an investigation right for the shooting.
Right.
But then again, that's where you get to, well, someone's on their property to defend themselves. If no one is charged, then eventually you give evidence back. So yeah, I would assume that they returned to firearms. But
I would assume they did. If they didn't, I could really see is like, hey, we're not going to look into this case any further. The DA said, if you guys agree to not getting these firearms back, that could happen, right?
Maybe. I guess.
I've done that on the street actually, where I've been like, hey man, listen, I'm not going to go through this, but I'm not going to give you the BB gun back.
Right.
Like your son allegedly did this. I could go through the whole rigmarole, whether he did or he didn't shoot that window out. But if the kid doesn't have the BB gun and we put and the BB gun goes away, I'm fine with not trying to figure out how that hole got there.
Yeah. A lot of gang members do that too. They're like, oh, never mind. I'm good. I'm gonna walk on down the street. It's like,
I don't need that phone.
Yeah. Like, I don't need that. But yeah, I would say back then that someone had to clear their evidence out. Like some poor officer probably had X number of rifles and pistols and shotguns and evidence that they had to clear at some point.
Now here's what the thing with that and how we can kind of tie it into problem now is he has an epic firefight with some really known bad gang members that they have been calling 911 over and over again, and the police haven't been able to do anything about it. And now the police show up and take all of their guns. But guess whose guns don't go away?
Exactly.
The bad guys' guns. So if we look at Tacoma, Washington, if we look at what just happened in New York with the new legislation that was just passed.
Sounds like an early prototype of modern gun control.
It does. So we're going to take the guns away from the good guy here, who actually, when we're not even close to done with this, because this is rapidly going to change the entire dynamics of Tacoma, Washington. Matter of fact, the police chief says that the number one the greatest thing, the number one life-changing event of all of Tacoma, Washington was this event, that it changed the whole dynamic. The whole dynamic of Tacoma changed because of this event. So you had one guy taking a stand when the government couldn't. And I'm pro-police, man. I was a police. We have a pro-police podcast, but the police are still a hand of the government. And I still don't believe that I should be able to take responsibility for myself, just why I feel like I should be able to wear a bulletproof vest if I so please. I shouldn't have to trust that the cops are going to protect my kids from getting shot up in the schools. Shit, dude. If I had a kid going to public school, I would probably rig the backpack up with a bulletproof vest of some sort. But you can't do that in New York. Okay. So they take the guns away from the good guys. The bad guys still have their guns. But this is where not just the Ranger family, which we know they're a kind of breed of their own. We've already talked about that. But the military family decides to step up that evening, started by an Air Force veteran that said, we're going back to that house and we're going to protect them. They don't have their guns anymore. And so several veterans from all over the Washington show up
even
on
happen?
Ash Street.
Do they have beepers? Do they have house phones? Like, what's going on?
Well,
like, how are they getting a hold of everybody like this?
Dude, they're Rangers at Fort Lewis.
A prayer chain?
No, it's at Fort Lewis. If you're stationed at Fort Bragg and you're living on Bragg Boulevard, where there's a bunch of shit goes on, and you have a big shootout, and all your homeboys are like, dude, fucking certain folks just got in this huge shootout. The news, and by the way, the news dove down on this. They came in hard. So it was national news. And that was what's really embarrassing to the chief, was now this chief who had taken 4 officers off of this street to put them into a community policing role and left 2 cops to police everything. Now his whole plan, he's obviously going to get fired from the city manager, because that's what they want. They want everything to be kind of quiet, hush, hush, keep everything swept under the rug. But now it's not. It's national news. So all these veterans come out of the woodwork and are now protecting Ash's house while this investigation is going on. And now he's flooded, which tensions were high. And Miss Renee Hartlett, as we talked about earlier, she's going to start saying that this is all about racism. and that it was a white officer versus a black neighborhood. Now you have a bunch of white people trying to take hold of a black neighborhood. And now the media, thank God the media wasn't as what it is now, because the media now would have made this whole thing to be a thing of racism, and everybody would have been on the side of the Crip gang members, and nobody would have taken the side of Sergeant Foulk. Not in today's climate. And so, think about like, what was the two people that came out on their yard with the rifle and the pistols as the BLM started marching through their neighborhood?
I think. I don't remember the names.
But nobody cared about their feelings and what they put into house. Everybody wanted to take the side of the shitheads that were actually burning cities down.
Yeah, how dare they come out on their own property and defend themselves with the firearms that they legally own? It's weird.
Right. So if this would have happened in nowadays, Sergeant Foulk would have been, but back at 1989, it seemed like people were still pretty overtly pro-police. And Foulk comes out and says, this isn't a problem with race. Matter of fact, like 4 of my Rangers were black. And by the way, like everybody that came to the community policing thing were all black and some Cubans. Mm-hmm. So this had nothing to do with race. This says, one, you're an open air drug market. One of the things I made is, why should the military be able to come out? There's a Reverend that come out, and I slipping in my notes here, but I had this Reverend's name. Let's see if I can find it really quickly. But this Reverend Oscar Tillman, who is a Tacoma chapter president. I don't know what chapter president, but he was also one of the residents. He says, you do not get trained. He's saying this about the police department. And he says this to the media. You quote, you do not get trained soldiers using weapons of death in a neighborhood that small and believe you're going to come out a winner, he said. So he's going against the police. Foulk said the Rangers acted on their own time with their own weapons. Army officials that did the investigation said that they would await completion of the police investigation before deciding whether disciplinary action was warranted. Major Clyde Newman, second in command of 2nd Ranger Battalion at nearby Fort Lewis, said, from everything I am told by the city police, the Rangers were right. They were having a party and they were attacked. Now, what they don't tell you that I read in an Army Times magazine, not an Army Times, but it was an Army article, was that the following day there was a health and welfare inspection across all of 2nd Ranger Battalion, and you're not allowed to have personal weapons in the barracks. And it is undocumented how many weapons were seized during that health and welfare inspection. Mm-hmm. So again, a whole bunch of really good Rangers who take pride in being nothing but Americans, who are the most professional, the ones that you really want having a gun. Now, listen, Robert's Rangers, right? They are the ones, they were the swamp foxes of the Patriot. That's where the Rangers started, in the swamp by Swamp Fox. And they are the ones who took the English down, the Redcoats, and ultimately changed the entire dynamic of the Revolutionary War. These are the dudes that still live by those principles. They still carry tomahawks to this day.
Yeah.
They still do.
Yeah. The lineage, like when you laid it out earlier, that's one of the things that a lot of people will say, like, well, who's the baddest or whatever, and I'm not saying they're the baddest out of everybody, but I'm saying what you're talking about is very focused, conditioned to the extreme.
SEALs aren't ever going to take a whole city.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Like,
Green Berets are not going to take a whole city.
Rangers are moving in. And
Rangers will take an entire fucking city.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, anybody just get bored and Google and go back and read like old Vietnam era books about LRPs and Ranger units in Vietnam. Same thing like you're talking
and they're
about.
Quiet professionals.
Yeah.
Even those books, it's not all about wrestling alligators and who was the baddest motherfucker on the planet. That's why you hear all these SEALs constantly, I'm the baddest dude on the planet. And I could call all of them out by name, right? They're all writing their books. They all got their TV shows. But Rangers are the real deal. Mm-hmm. And they don't take, because they're team element.
Yeah.
SEALs are individuals, man. I don't care. Well, at least that's what they portray. Now, real SEALs that really know combat, they stay shut. They're the real deal. You don't see them. You don't see them. I've got a very good friend of mine who shares the same name as my oldest son, Duke. He's a real SEAL. Doesn't talk, doesn't gloat, doesn't try to be an influencer, doesn't have the social media webs, doesn't let anybody know he's a SEAL. He's a real SEAL. He's a real SEAL.
People up in the privates.
Yeah, hitting up in the DMZs. So these guys are. I'm sorry. Yes, Colonel Francis Marion was the Swamp Fox. Yes, and it's so hard when you're trying to read your notes, remember things, and talk. At the
I don't know how
same
you
time.
do it, man.
I get so flustered by the end of these shows. I'm like Joe Biden. I'm gonna start just going off on. Yeah,
Well-
he was a bad boy.
Well, anyway,
Hell yeah. Yeah, you know.
you know the thing. You know the guy.
But yeah, we have Lazaro Lopez says we met a real Navy SEAL in Nashville. What a stand-up guy. Yeah, doing push-ups in the middle of a bar, completely fucked out of his mind, hammered drunk. I was really, really proud to know him. Proud to know a guy like that. Not a quiet professional. Not these Rangers. So now you're going to go into these barracks and you're going to take away all these guys that we just talked about. You're going to take away their private guns. But the Crip gang members, they didn't lose their guns.
Well, but now let's say this. If the police had encountered them and they had guns on them, like that one guy that has the empty weapon or whatever, they would have seized them. The drawback is it sounds like Crips weren't getting detained with firearms. Is that right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, they would have
they only
slinked
slinked
back into the shadows, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
While
It's
the
like-
Rangers would be just sitting there like, "Hey, this is what happened." You know,
Well, they
like
did.
they're being
the-
very forthright, right?
The Rangers actually, the funny part that I read on this, and this was coming from the Associated Press article from 1989, was when Foulk was done shooting, he was quoted as saying he had all the Rangers put their guns in a laundry basket and had the laundry basket upstairs.
Modern day boating accident.
And they went downstairs, and the first officer on scene, he doesn't remember that officer's name, but this is Foulk saying, but the Foulk said, "What the fuck is going on? Who's in charge here?" Foulk said, "Well, I guess I am." And that's how that investigation started.
Yeah.
I guess I am, homie.
Yeah.
What do you want to know? Like, they didn't have anything to hide. They didn't run. They didn't flee.
Let me interrupt for a second. I
Please.
think the logic with the laundry basket would have been that no weapons would have been out so that no one would accidentally get shot by
Right.
police, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And when the cop said, "Hey, where are you?" I mean, again, this is
Right.
that organization. This is that well-planned,
They're
well-thought out.
in this location. They're in this
Yeah.
basket. They're all there. Like, we
Exactly,
don't have
yeah.
any. Yeah.
Now here's what an untrained Crip gang member. Matter of fact, in his statement, he says that the gang members were running through the shadows, firing over their shoulders,
Yeah.
and one of them shot the ground in front of him himself, as in he accidentally squeezed off a round. They had accounts of them tripping and falling on themselves. One ran up into the yard, tripped and fell, and tried to escape the yard and slipped and fell. All the while, he was not shot by the Rangers. And I think when he's giving this, is he's saying it's like you've got these well-trained Rangers who can shoot anything, who shoot all day long, every day of their life, probably close to 7 days a week. They shoot.
Yeah.
Because they shoot at work 5 days a week, and then they probably shoot on their own, whether they're 3-gun competitors or what. No, these guys probably shoot every day. So what he's saying is one ran into my yard, fell, got up, fell again, and he didn't get shot. And he's saying that proves to you that we weren't here to kill him, because we could have killed that dude.
Let me say this too. This is, and I'm not joking. The old TV show, The A-Team.
Yeah.
Right. The running joke was always the A-Team would shoot 30 rounds out of a Mini 14 and never hit what they're shooting. They must not be real Green Berets. But the A-Team never shot and killed anybody, because then that would be murder.
Yeah.
So the same thing applies here. They are
Suppressive
being
fire.
exactly. They're being very focused, like you said earlier. They're firing on them, pinning them down, or moving them down the street through fire. But they could have. I mean, there's no doubt within what 5 meters or something, 7 meters, they could have popped that guy.
Oh,
But they didn't. That's the whole point. It's
Right.
like, look, we're doing everything by the book, which is once again very, very impressive.
Very professional.
Yeah, because like you just said, there are people that will get shot when they're doing robberies and stuff, running into one another and blasting each other by accident because their fingers on the trigger and poor trigger control. The same thing there. Like, so probably the dude that, if a guy showed up somewhere else and was shot, he may have even been shot by his own people,
Right.
running in and out of the shadows or jumping in and out of cars and stuff. But yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like, you know,
Pity the Crip.
units are
Oh,
military units work well together,
Good
but
job,
you got to think
Taco.
that this Ranger squad has been in isolation prep before.
Mhm.
And ISO prep is when they take 7 dudes and they put them in the room and they shut all the doors and they lock it, and they could be in that room for 5 days. They're brought food in, the food's taken out, they sleep in isolation prep. That's when they're prepping for a mission. They go into isolation so that none of the intel gets leaked out and that nothing happens to anybody that would fuck up the mission. Because if you know what you're supposed to do, but then we all leave and then you trip on the sidewalk and break your ankle, and now we don't have you.
Mhm.
So these guys they're not just like your typical Marines or your 11 Bravo infantry guys. No, these guys are the real deal. So when you get a squad together, they already know how to work. They already know how to act. Some things don't even have to be said. This squad leader says, nobody's going to die here tonight. We're going to check your fire. Everybody's going to check your fire. You're going to put suppressive fire. We're going to articulate where these things are, blah, 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 blah. So, and that's why you don't see a lot of Ranger mishaps. You don't see a lot of missions that go down. We see Navy SEAL missions that go horribly wrong. We see Delta Force missions that go horribly wrong. You don't necessarily see a lot of Ranger operations that go terribly, terribly wrong.
What happens now? So the barracks thing, we don't know how many were taken. They turn their weapons over, and now what? So they lose all their weapons, and it's national news. And so they flood Ash Street with police, and they go hard. The police go hard. They're going to take back Ash Street, and they put a heavy police presence and one of the largest community watch programs that spread like wildfire throughout the United States on Ash Street. And that community protection, that community watch program still exists today. And I believe is still ran by Sergeant Foulk, who works for the Department of Justice. Foulk was told by his commandant, you will never, ever get promoted past staff sergeant in this battalion. And they said, why? And he says, because you drew attention to yourself and it wasn't in the right way, which I agree with. You're a quiet professional. You're no longer quiet anymore. And that's okay. You saved your house, but we told you not to buy that house. And we told you to stop going to the house. And one of his superior officers said, we are not barring you from the house because we can't do that, but we suggest you don't go back there and that you sell that house. Sergeant Foulk never sold that house. He still owns it to this day. That's awesome.
He
that he
still lives there to this day and has a Ranger flag.
Just own it.
I don't know. I guess I can't answer that. I know that there is a flag, a Ranger flag hanging in front of it. It is blurred out on Google, but you can go to YouTube and see a couple of thugs. They call him the White Devil. And they say, this is where the devil lives. And what a fucking awesome name. And if you go ahead and put that picture back up there of Sergeant Foulk. It doesn't say what he does for the DOJ right now, but that's him. Definitely looks like a professional. A lot of people like to think, you go to these trailer parks.
Bill Gates was thinner and a real man.
Yes. Not pregnant. But, a lot of times people see these Ranger flags, where they'll have it'll be hanging outside of a trailer and it'll say 1 shot, 1 kill, United States Rangers. That's probably not a Ranger. Might be a guy with a Ranger tab. Might be a guy that served next to Rangers, but I'm sure he's not a Ranger. Yeah, I know a lot of Rangers. I've worked with Rangers for a very long time. My business partner that I own and still is a tier 1 operator and trains with Rangers all the time. So I know them very well. I know a lot of them very well. And I've been in that community for a very long time. And, it's Rangers don't wear the Ranger tab shirts.
Right.
They don't wear the.
Let me interrupt.
Some do.
I'm going to tell you who a quiet professional is about having a Ranger tab is Chris Christopherson. Most people probably don't know who I'm talking about, but he's a singer. He's a famous country singer.
I did not know that.
Went to Ranger school.
Okay.
You can Google it.
Yeah.
You got to Google it because he doesn't really talk about it a whole lot. But yeah, the Highwayman. He's long time country singer, actor. Probably most audience members, if they've seen the movie Blade, I think he's in Blade. But yeah, he was Ranger.
Yeah, when you see the big giant Ranger scroll going across somebody's truck, that was probably a reservist or National Guardsman that went to Ranger school and then went back to his air defense artillery unit. And so he puts Ranger on there to identify himself, but that's not. So it's not a real Ranger.
Out, though, when we were talking about this, when we first started talking about it, when I was in the Army, this was like, even though it made national news back in '89, I never saw this on the news. So later, when I'm in the Army, this is like urban legend that, hey, have y'all heard about these Rangers? And the way the legend went was that these Rangers in Tacoma got a deuce and a half, signed their weapons out of the armory, and did a drive-by and just lit up an entire crack house or whatever. And that was the legend. So we're just, because we have no way of checking it back then. You didn't have the internet or any of that. I mean, we're young privates. Well, we've got a platoon sergeant at the time that loved disseminating misinformation. So he would say stuff like, yeah, you do know that John Denver was an Army sniper. Now everybody would have to Google John Denver. He's an old country singer, right?
Fucking Denver.
And he's like, John Denver was a sniper, and his sniper rifle was called Sunshine. And the song Sunshine on My Shoulder is about John Denver smoking people as a sniper. We bought into all of this.
Not true.
Right? None of it's true. Hawk from the Road Warriors, he told us, oh yeah, he was in 7th Special Forces Group. He was a Green Beret. So we walked around like the whole time thinking one half of the Road Warriors WWF wrestling was a Green Beret, but none of that was true.
No.
He just, Mr. Rogers was supposedly alert. Like, he
with
he had
full
told
sleeve of tattoos.
Yeah, he
That's
was like, he's like, oh, Mr. Rogers, man, he was in Vietnam, LERP, Ranger, and all that. And we bought into all this, and like none of it's true. But back then, you could get away with that. Now you just Google something and go negative.
Now listen, BC, you are in charge of a group of pretty elite individuals still in your life, and I hope that you would tell them about the importance of life insurance, especially in the field that you work in. I hope that Sergeant Foulk talked to his men about Policy Genius, and that he had them all go on the interwebs, and they went to policygenius.com. They use our promo code Wolfpack. It's policygenius.com/Wolfpack to find your policy today. Why do you need life insurance? Because you have no idea when a bunch of dirtbag Crip gang members are going to shoot up your house. Might take one through the window. Might be an unfortunate. You might be just driving down the neighborhood, catch one right in the neck as you're driving through. Could be game over. If you're a police officer, if you're an Army Ranger, you have to have life insurance, and Policy Genius makes it simple. I've used Policy Genius. I was able to get quoted in less than 15 minutes, and I was quoted less than what I was currently paying. Having life insurance through your job may not be enough. For me, it was pretty good, but it definitely wasn't enough. And people need up to 10 times more coverage to properly provide for their families. I now have $1 million to myself life insurance policy for my children.
So that little Tansey right there.
Whether you're graduating from school, planning a wedding, welcoming a baby, or switching jobs, now is the time to protect your family's finances. Matter of fact, when I got married is when I received my first life insurance policy. It was actually a gift. It was a wedding gift. Very weird, but it makes sense. Policy Genius is your one-stop shop to find insurance at the right price. Click on the link in the description, policygenius.com/Wolfpack to get started. In minutes, you can compare personalized quotes from top companies to find the lowest price. I love things that are easy. This is super simple. You could save 50% or more on life insurance by comparing quotes to Policy Genius. No extra fees. Doesn't sell your info to third parties. Thousands of 5-star reviews. Options to offer coverage in as little as a week to avoid any unnecessary medical exams. Since 2014, 30 million people has shopped insurance, saving over $150 billion. Head to policygenius.com/Wolfpack to get your free life insurance quote and see how much you could save. Head to https://policygenius.com/Wolfpack to get your free life insurance quote and see how much you could save. Now, finishing up this story, wrapping it all up.
Wrap it up, baby.
Tacoma is now super safe. Kidding. But 23rd and Ash is super safe. And I'd like to think that there is a little bit of Ash Street in every city across America.
Mm-hmm.
And I had talked to you before about Rocky Mount. Can you talk to us a little bit about Rocky Mount? You were a little bit familiar with the way that the gangs had overtaken. I thought what you told me was pretty interesting.
Yeah, so I've talked to officers there for, I don't know, maybe like the last 10 years, 12 years, and they have nationally recognized gangs there. So like we've talked about on the previous episodes, you've got Grape Street Crips in that area. You've got 9 Trey Bloods. I think you've got Sex Money Murder Bloods. So you can trace all that. They probably got some Sereno cliques, like Sewer 13. So, and in Rocky Mount is a small town, but it's small. Like that all over. So you're right. Once you get an Ash Street in there and you don't kind of control the tempo of that area and you let it go like a garden, you don't go out there and weed it, then you end up having those problems until citizens eventually will push back. Like citizens are only going to take so much, and then they're going to, and usually it's a citizen who's already been through at least a street fight before and goes, okay, I can take these guys, or they're just like, well, I'm going to defend my home.
Some real Gran Torino stuff. Do you think gangs are on the rise right now?
Hell yeah. Like, I mean, like, that's what I'm saying. If you pick,
because like in the 90s, like give me the history going just quickly, the 80s, like the ups and downs.
Yeah. So like I mentioned Colors earlier. So when the movie Colors came out, that put Bloods and Crips on like the
national
level. Like that was spoken in homes, neighborhoods, high schools. So then people started mimicking that and kind of building sort of their own sets and claiming, oh, we're Crip or we're Blood. And that kind of phased out probably in some of like the late 90s, mid 90s. But now you can probably go to, I know, all your cities. And if cities have a gang, like you mentioned Detroit earlier. So if Detroit, let's say they have a Blood set operating there or some type of Blood there, you could probably trace it back to LA or to an East Coast Blood nation. But same thing with Chicago. You got Gangster Disciples, which I believe are in Tacoma. Probably been there for about 10 or 15 years, if not longer. Latin Kings, like Vice Lords, like all these gangs permeate out from Chicago, and wherever people move, wherever they serve time, they bring it back there. So right now you've got the rising gangs nationwide, actually worldwide. You got gangs all over Mexico, Central America. But you've got the rising gangs. You've got reactive police now instead of proactive. Like I mentioned earlier, you've got patrol units that are going to have to deal with a problem like in Rocky Mount. Whereas if you had a specialized unit, a gang unit, drug unit, they would go in there and they would be hyper focused on that Ash Street problem, so to speak. And that Ski and I do a whole episode on it in the future with the disruptors. But it's this idea of you focus on that one area and you pull in all these different facets and then you just address it. You pull all resources in. These problems are not like insurmountable,
but they're not going to go away because we're not doing that kind of proactive policing anymore.
Well, but that's coming. It's that pendulum swinging right back. If you study the trends in police work,
but I mean, it can't come back. I mean, they just literally indicted, what's his name from the Patrick Leola case for murder. They just picked him up for murder. I don't know how you get cops.
It's going to be a nightmare because you're going to be left with bad cops or corrupt cops.
So there you go. So now we're going to enter the era where if we lower standards, which departments are going to have to.
They all have.
Yeah, because you've got most departments operating about 60% strength if everybody shows up to work. And most people are out sick. They got in-service training, whatever. Really, when all this is going to change, and it's sad, I don't talk politics. I'm just going to say when an election happens and people get voted out and they realize, oh, wow, we should have been making decisions based on people's safety and not how we get reelected or how we think we can manipulate a population, then you're going to see that pendulum swing full bore across the country. Right now, though, you've got deputies or sheriffs and police chiefs willing to stiffen their spine and say, we don't get involved in this other than crime fighting, and that's all we're going to do. And some will step forward and get on the news and say, this is what happened and this is why. Right. That's the main thing. The Ash Street stuff, and I'm not knocking Tacoma PD or anything like that. I'm just saying that if that problem happens now, we've got so many years of studying this and understanding it. It's not insurmountable. It's actually a lot easier to do that than to deal with, say, domestic violence or credit card fraud or DWI. I mean, it's like this is a very isolated problem that you can do. You just got to be the oncologist, go in there and boom, cut out the damn cancer.
Which is interesting because there's just so many streets out there. And I'm sure, you touched on it a little bit, Mike, but there's so many streets out there that are just like for 30 years, that's been the street. And I've never understood is like, how can you not fucking fix that?
Well, that's what I'm saying. You can, but
why don't they?
Yeah. Well,
it's like, why haven't you fixed Bragg Street? So why haven't they fixed?
Yeah. Because if someone who has that background, who does like cop work, if they don't put in for promotions and they don't move up the chain, then policies can't change, strategies can't change. They can't get a seat at that table to say, hey, chief, or hey, sheriff, I know this is the one thing I know how to do. Let me put this in place. Let me pull some hard chargers. Let me do this. And this quote unquote Ash Street problem you got, I'm going to take care of it for you. And if I fail, it's on me, which I'm not going to fail because I'm good at what I do. That's what you have to have. Sadly, right now, we also have that lack of
a lot of these departments
retired,
are going to these tests to get promoted where it's not about your work. It's not about what you've done in the past. It's how do you do the test? You're a number. These are outside agencies. So like if North Carolina if there's a department in North Carolina that's going up for promotion, a department from Texas comes in, assigns all those people a number, has them take a test, and then has them go through scenarios, which then you could fake the funk. You could be a piece of shit cop and go to a scenario and kick ass because you've war gamed and war planned in your brain how to run that scenario.
Yeah.
But that's not how they do it on the street. They're actually dirtbags on the street. They don't work hard.
Yeah.
But now in to show off in front of these people that don't know you, they put out, and then now all of a sudden they're promoted, and the guy that sucks at taking the test or that actually knows how one of those scenarios plays out doesn't get promoted.
Here's a perfect example. It would be like someone saying, "Oh, you want to go to Ranger school? Just sit right here, read the Ranger manual, and just tell me what you would do if you were in a firefight. Tell me what you would do.
Study the manual and take a test."
Exactly. Whereas street cops that actually go out there and do it may not be able to sit in a test taking environment and pass with flying colors. But if you put them in the middle of chaos, they'll solve the problem, or they'll motivate the right people to solve the problem. So you're right. That is, I could talk for days on it, because that leadership gap that we've got going on right now is only going to get worse, because the generation that spent 4 or 5 or 6 years on patrol, now they're moving up to sergeant.
Right. And their whole time in patrol has been very hands-off.
It's been
we're all racist, and they saw their supervisors kneeling in solidarity, doing the hands up, don't shoot type thing, which we know now was not real, right? But
yeah, I was going to say that
the hands up, don't shoot didn't exist.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say, I don't want to get off on a tangent about kneeling, but if I'm standing in a crowd and people are chanting and screaming at me, and we all lock hands, hug, and kneel together as cops and as citizens, and I saw that happen at the time, it sends the message of, we're not the enemy. Citizens and police, you can protest all you want, just don't attack cops and don't riot. But and I saw it, and it was another city where they hugged like 2 people, and then the officer and the citizen, and then everybody followed suit. And I got a lump in my throat, because I'm like, this is what it's supposed to be. You're supposed to be able to protest, but you're not supposed to be able to harm other people. You know what I mean? Like that's a right. But that's a whole nother topic. The leadership gap, though, is the problem that's going to happen now, because as people move up into leadership and they don't have that solid background, when they are a lieutenant or a sergeant and someone goes, "We've got this Ash Street problem," just like in Tacoma, they're going to go, "Well, wow, what should we do?" And they're not going to be able to draw on their own background, and their subordinates have never really done proactive stuff. So it's not like if I were, say, you're lieutenant or sergeant, I come to you and be like, "Hey, how do we fix your street?" You know what I mean? Like, you're the patrol officer. Give me some good ideas. You're squared away. We've got that gap happening now, and that's going across the country.
Yeah. It's very fascinating
in this
stuff.
Case, we had some Army Rangers that that took the lead and set the example for cops to say, like, "Hey, listen, you can't just sit back and say, well, that's too bad. We're giving that ground up, and with no plan to get it back." Somebody stood up within the community that happened to have a skill set to actually do it effectively and teach those cops what that means, forced their hand, forced them into action, and made a lasting impact on something. And hopefully we'll have people that know how to step up and do that.
And I think that was the important thing that you said, is that he stepped up and he did it the right way. And I think we need more citizens to step up and take on some responsibility for cleaning up their neighborhoods, for making their schools safer, for making things safer. It's stepping up, but in a well-planned way. It's not this emotional, irrational response to let's take guns away or whatever it is. It's not like, I'm going to show up there and I'm going to confront him, I'm going to pound on his door, and I'm going to say, "You're going to clean your shit up now." You're probably going to get shot and die.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's doing a well-articulated, well-planned. What can I do to not, one, hurt anybody else, and one, not hurt myself? What kind of community meetings can I set up? And if I do run into a problem with the community meetings, how do I fix it? Thing is, I think we all of us will say a couple of words on social media, and then we feel like we've done our deed. We feel like, okay, so that's and that to me is going back to this whole Ghislaine Maxwell Epstein thing. That's why I love Elon Musk so much. It's because we've all just got on the interwebs, typed out our feelings on it, even though we all collectively know that there's some really crazy shit going on there, but we've all just accepted it. Nobody's really, really trying to do something except, Elon Musk in this scenario. But I think there's just more of us that we need to, I think there are more civilians that need to do things to clean up their community.
And the easiest step, like I mentioned earlier, is just provide info. It doesn't have to be walking into a police station. It's just contacting your local police department, whether that's at a gas station, that's on a call. You see an officer, give them a heads up, like, hey, you need to keep an eye on this house or this apartment or this trailer. You give them that info. It's anonymous. Boom, they start working it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like giving that info, not sitting around saying, hey, they sell drugs out of apartment
Dude,
A.
a beat cop loves that. Like,
yeah.
there's nothing better than when a call comes through that you have to call somebody because they have information for you.
Yes.
And you're like, oh,
yeah.
shit, I get to have a call that I don't have to go do a report on. I don't have to go deal with domestic violence right now. I got a call about somebody that's going to give me 2 kilos of cocaine that's being sold down the back of their neighborhood. Now I can work a search warrant. Now I can work with gang unit. You know what I mean? It's like,
give them something to do that they thought they'd be doing when they signed up for the job.
Well,
exactly.
Yeah, you actually go home and you go, wow, I did something. And then when that citizen contacts you later and says, I saw you out there. I saw you bring that SWAT team in, or I saw you make that arrest. Like, thank you. We'll get you more info. You just keep cleaning up that house or that area to where the neighborhood itself doesn't have to collapse. Like you were saying, like with Ash Street, it's just that one hive, that one house.
Yeah. We need JD Buck Savage to get back on.
JD Buck Savage here, cleaning up Ash Street in today's video. Guys, you heard the Ash Street shootout from a perspective that you're not going to get anywhere else. We were able to have not only BC with us to explain some of the gang side of things, but Eric able to bring in some of his experience and knowledge about what is it to be a ranger. How did they put this together so effectively? And all of us just kind of our combined experience from police officers, where Tacoma was backing out, where they needed to assert themselves, and what we learned from it. You're not going to get this sort of angle anywhere else on the Ash Street shootout. So we appreciate you guys hanging out with us, listening. Hopefully you learned something and enjoyed the process. Any parting words, boys?
Bosco says, I don't trust Elon and his scheme. We talk about this on Last Call Today all the time. I say he's a superhero or a supervillain. I don't know. I'm with you, man. I don't know. But he's doing a lot of the right things for me. And that's one, keeping a lot of pressure. He's the only one, frankly, keeping pressure on the Ghislaine Maxwell thing and releasing that list. And I'm a big advocate of that, man. This guy wasn't a politician. This guy wasn't. I don't understand why why he's privy to such, I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. I'm having a real Joe Biden moment.
Well, anyway.
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 No, but I mean, I don't understand why why his investigation gets to be hush hush when we've literally covered investigations that are exactly like that, where we were able to get everything as far as, oh God, I'm really having a Joe Biden moment. We're able to get polygraphs and everything else. So
you done talk too much, man. You gone too long. You fried your brain.
I went off script.
All right, everybody, guys, we seriously appreciate you all listening. We had a lot of people watching the show. That we have a lot of people still tuning in right now. Hit the like button on the way out.
Smash that like button.
Subscribe if you like the content. Hanging out with us, hit the subscribe button too.
If you support the Crip gang members, don't hit the like button.
Yeah, if you like the Crips, then get out of here. But if you like the pricks, stick around. Wait, what? I don't know. You'll have to listen back for that inside joke. All right, guys, thanks so much, and we will see you next time.